there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be doing some die cut inlay today. Now I was just debating whether I wanted to use the warms or the cools today, and when I was flicking through them I think I'm going to go with the warms. It just felt like the person that I was giving it to, this would be really nice, but it is a really easy card that you could definitely turn this into a slightly more masculine one, or it could be a card that you just keep in your stash and would be good for lots of different occasions. I'm also going to be using a bit of gold cardstock. Then I am going to be using these square dies. Now these are just stacking square dies that came together and I just haven't separated them yet. So I did separate them into these kind of two little lots of two, but they all came all joined together, and this is just how I kind of pulled them apart. But if you only have stacking dies that are already pulled apart, then just use a little bit of low-tack tape to pop them together. And I, into my card front here, have just cut out one of the medium-sized squares, and then out of the gold cardstock I'm going to cut one of all of the sizes, because I'm going to kind of layer up a square, coloured square with a gold frame, and then I'm going to cut into that with another square. So it sounds confusing, but in my head I kind of knew what I was doing. So I'm also going to cut them out of the coloured cardstock. Now don't get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of frames here and things that I can use for another card. There's going to be some leftovers, so I'm popping a pile of those aside as well. And then I have die cut out all three different sizes in the coloured cardstock that I will need also. So I'm just popping some low-tack tape here onto the back of my card front. Then I'm popping in the medium-sized gold frame and then filling it in with the square. Now you could use anything here on the back, washi tape, anything at all, because we are not going to end up seeing it. It's going to be completely hidden, so it's really just there to serve a purpose, to hold everything in place for the minute. Now here is the larger of all of the squares, and I'm going to pop that in place. Then you can see it pops out. I'm going to cut into that other square. Now there are so many different ways that you are able to kind of do this pattern, but this is just the one that I chose today. So I'm going to pop in my gold frame and then my pink larger square into the middle, then put down my next die. So the die cut inlay is where you have a completely flat surface and you inlay all of the pieces back in. So I am cutting out some pieces and I'm putting other pieces right back in to where they came out, and that is die cut inlay. So this here is completely all flat. Now at this point I thought I was going to stop, but it did feel too empty, so I'm going to keep going and add a little bit more, a couple more squares while I'm at it. So I just had to die cut a little bit more of the gold frames and a couple more colors, deciding which colors I would pop up there. And then of course I need to also do it into my card front. So I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine, and I must admit even the squares that I die cut out here were quite cool, so I will keep those and create another card as well. Again, putting a little bit of low-tack tape on the back and then popping in the frame and then the little square, and then I'm going to add one more just down here so it balances it out and it's a nice uneven number. And the way that I kind of chose to do this today, it looks like the squares are kind of all stacked on top of each other. It's the kind of simple way of doing the die cut inlay here, which is how I like things. I don't like to get too complicated in my card making. But once everything is popped in there, I'm just going to rip off the little edges and it looks pretty good. Anything that was hanging over the edge of the low-tack tape I just ripped off. And now on the back of this, I am going to cut a piece of double-sided adhesive. This is the scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive, and I'm just going to, it comes in different size sheets, but I have the 6x6 sheets. This is a really, really strong double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to take off one of the release papers and pop it on the back of my whole design, and I know that that just seals everything. Because all I used was the low-tack tape on the back, and now that I know it is nice and secure. So here I just have the Hero Arts Infinity rectangle set, and I'm just choosing a rectangle that I want to cut out from my card front. Originally I was just going to use the entire card front as is, but as I kind of progressed along the pattern I decided I would cut it out, so that's okay, a bit of an afterthought. So I've picked out a rectangle that is good to go, held it down with a little bit of low-tack tape, and then I run that through my die cutting machine. Then I decided I also wanted to have a little thin gold border around the outside as well. So I'm taking 2 of the rectangles, which are side by side in the set, and I use a little bit of low-tack tape in each corner, and that way my frame is going to stay nice and still as it goes through my die cutting machine. And that's what I would have done with the squares. If they weren't already joined together, I would have just used a little bit of low-tack tape and joined them together to cut out my original design. Now here it is sitting on top of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and I want the frame to sit completely flat, but I want to pop up the center. So I'm just sort of sitting the center just there, popping the frame around it with some liquid glue. And then you can see my card front there still pops off. I have some foam that I am going to pop this up on. This is just like fun foam, just kids fun foam. I do end up buying this online, but anywhere I'm sure you can get it from $2 shops and all those sorts of things. Any of that foam is really good for using as layers. And then because we already had the double-sided tape there on the back, I just took away another of the release papers and then added the foam and then a little bit of liquid glue so I can pop it right inside of that gold frame, and it just creates that really nice little bit of solid dimension. Then to finish it off, you guys know that these are my favorite. I know it's painful seeing them time and time again, but I'm using the little LDRS sentiment stack set with the matching coordinating die set, and that cuts out all of those different stamp sets. I am so desperately low on my foam tape at the moment. You can see I have been nursing this one along to just use it when I needed to. And then I'm going to add a few of the Morning Dew Nuvo drops. Now it's important that you see this one dries clear. So it does go on sort of a little bit cloudy, but it dries completely and utterly clear. So they just become little drops on my design, and that is it for this really simple card. I hope you enjoyed this die cut inlay one. Please give me a thumbs up, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!